Hi, I'm Dr. Mitch Harlan, and welcome to the Truth Talks podcast. I'm here today with Mike C-Roc. Mike, how are you?
Doing good, Dr. Mitch. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, man. You are the author of the book Rocket Fuel. I see it there sitting right behind you. Let's show everybody what that looks like.
Yeah, here you go. Get a close up.
Right there, baby. So tell us a little bit about Rocket Fuel before we jump into who you are.
Yeah, so I grew up around a lot of brokenness, Mitch, and when I did, I witnessed a lot of people telling a story and then living that story out that they would tell. So if I had an alcoholic in my family, a drug addict, or somebody that was dealing with anxiety and depression, they always told a story of why that was like that. And then they would live it out. And it was so obvious to me. I sat there and watched it. I'm like, you're storing everything in your trunk. And your trunk is weighing you down and slowing you down. And then you're living out the story that you're telling. It's like so obvious to me. And I would call them out on it. And then they would start to resent me for it because it's the truth. I know. I love how this is called the truth talk. It was the truth. I was just being truthful. Well, what I started to realize in my life too, is I started realizing that, if you could take everything that came your way and it seemed like it was there to stop you or slow you down, but it's really not. It's everything's for us. We know that. And you store it in your tank and convert it into rocket fuel, you become unstoppable. And so I wrote a book about that. And there's stories from my life in there, stories from my days of mentorship when I was being mentored and what I learned. And, since that book came out, I've learned so much more. I'm a constant lifetime learner. And I probably could write several more books. I just haven't gotten over the editing process yet, and that traumatic experience of editing a book.
Tell me.
But so that's what it was all about.
I love bringing on different guests for different reasons, and this one's kind of powerful for me because we had a conversation before, and it seems like our lives kind of parallel a little bit. And so I'm going to ask you the questions I ask myself all the time. You are in a successful career. I have a successful career, but there was something burning inside me that said there's more for you. And I assume that might be something that you went through. Did you ever go through that moment in time where you were like, man, is the stuff that's going through my head and the stuff I want to say to people, is it really something they want to listen to?
Yeah, I do go through that at times. Really, man, I was just thinking about this the other day. I hear other people nowadays, from when I first started till now, there's so many people out there just preaching on social media. And that kind of gets on my nerves because, and by the way, I say gets on my nerves because I see myself when I started in these people that are on social media nowadays, and they're just regurgitating a lot of information and very bad storytelling. And I believe that you can make a big impact when you're vulnerable and transparent and tell stories. And I don't see a lot of that in a lot of the preaching and thought leadership that's on Instagram and all these other places. So yeah, I go through that sometimes, and I remind myself that I need to not just talk about lessons and things, but share stories and, relate to people.
You had a great saying. It was one that I absolutely love. Matter of fact, I think it's probably one of the best damn sayings I've ever heard. So if you hear it repeat, I'll try and give you credit for it, but I'm going to be sharing this thing, man, because it's the best.
Fair enough. I'm good with it.
It says, if I make millions of dollars, those $1,000 problems will be minuscule. Man, that's wicked powerful right there.
Yeah. I used to get worked up about little things, man. And then, like I think the story was I was telling when I said that was, I would come home and my wife, when Amazon started to get popular and UPS, and I come home and there's boxes at the door every time I come home from work. And I'm like, every single day. And I would get worked up about it. Like, what are you doing? Like, why are you spending so much money? Like all of a sudden, like, do you have a problem? Like, and I was thinking, and all I could see was dollar signs and adding up. And I'm like, I felt like I was on a hamster wheel, and I couldn't keep up. And then I realized, like, wait a minute, I just need to outpace her. And then also need, create bigger problems. So, because if I was like focused on these little thousands and maybe 10,000, I don't know how much she was spending, but like $10,000 problems. If I'm making millions and focused on millions, that stuff's like minuscule. So like, that's what I mentioned when I said something about considering how big the universe is, and then thinking about our emotions and our daily little present time problems. They're not really a big deal. Because at the end of the day, like, think about it. Like, if you think about going straight up in the air as far as you could, and not stopping until you get to wherever the end is, you can't even think like that. You can't, it just hurts to think like that. So I think expansion helps a lot with little tiny everyday present time problems. And I think a lot of our problems too, Dr. Mitch, come from this concept in our head that there's not enough space, and we get closed up and we get like tight. It's figuratively, right? And it's not really figuratively, it's actually literally, but it's not seen. It's more of like an energy matter situation. But when we go out and see, maybe you go out in the night sky and see how big the sky is, or you go out to the desert or the mountains and you see how big things are. Our problems, they're not that big a deal.
When did you come to that discovery?
Well, first I heard it was when I was, Grant Cardone was a mentor of mine back in the day. And I just heard him say, man, you guys need bigger problems. And I was like, what does that mean? Bigger problems? Shit, I don't want to deal with the problems I have right now. What do you mean bigger problems? I just couldn't wrap my head around it at first. Then I started to realize like, oh, okay. First of all, life sucks if you don't have problems. Matter of fact, people will, if you don't create problems to handle and to overcome and confront, you will just do destructive things to cause it. So you can have, I guess my point is that you're going to create problems for yourself no matter what. It's either constructive or destructive problems, right? And so I started to realize life without problems is not even a life. So I'm going to have problems. I might as well have big ones.
I love it. You know, it's a simple concept, but it's so real, right?
Yeah. And it's like driving down a highway. Like everybody's been on a 4-lane highway and it's straight, not hilly, nothing to look at. Would you rather ride on that? No bumps, nothing, just nothing. Or would you rather be on a little bit of a windy road, hilly road, scenery, mountains, water to see, animals to see?
You know, I get to experience the lives of, you know, thousands of people every year. And man, it's just a blessing to me. It's actually what drove me to do this. Cause I'm like, man, there is so much suffering in this world. If one thing or two things, producer Chad and I, we tagged a thing, you know, 8 seconds in every conversation has a chance to change your life. And I'm like, man, this guy's got such a great message. And so a lot of people do. And I know that you have a company that facilitates these podcasts. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I was in mortgage real estate for 20 years. I had some of my bestest friends I grew up with since we were kids. We started this company and we grew it to 7 branches, 50 some employees, hundreds of employees over the time came through. And we were doing anywhere between 11 to 13 million a year in revenue and thinking life was great. Come home. All of us were married, healthy kids, married for a long time, beautiful wives. I come home and I was conflicted because I wasn't fulfilled. You were telling me on the phone the other day in the story, and I tell the same story every day. And you were like just talking about it through chiropractic versus mortgages. But I just was coming home confused because I was doing everything I thought I was taught to do in life, which is take care of your family, provide, make a lot of money, have a nice house on the water here. Like this view I have is sick. But I was like, something inside me is telling me that I'm not fulfilling the purpose that I was put here for. Like I'm not playing a big enough game. There's something like, so I peeled back all the layers and I found out that I wasn't playing a big enough game. And I really realized that this, like what you guys are looking at for those of you watching, like this body, this is the body that I'm using as my vehicle while I'm here. I identify as a spiritual being. Like I'm so big. All of us are, we just don't realize it. I found out that I'm a big, huge being, spiritual being. And I can accomplish so much and help so much. So once I peel back the layers and realize that, then I pushed the pedal down to the metal and I said, you know what? I'm going to be that one. And I started saying that all the time. I'm going to be that one and leaning into it unapologetically. Well, in doing that, I said, I need to get known because I'm a performance coach and scaling business expert and brand builder. And I just felt like the best kept secret. And I said, I can't be the best kept secret anymore. I need to get this message out. So I decided and committed to get known globally. Well, when I did that, podcasting fell in my lap. 4 or 5 years ago, I didn't even know what a podcast was. And some guy asked me to come on his show. Shout out to Chris Donaldson, Office Hours podcast. And I went on his show and I felt like a rock star. My confidence went up. I started having all these cognitions happen, these aha moments. I realized like, wow, man, like this is how Gary Vee, Grant Cardone, Tony Robbins, Ed Mylett, this is how all they did it. They went on a bunch of podcasts. Now, when you go on a podcast, people don't realize this. Your name appears in the title. When people publish the podcast, it goes on their website. Now you're not just on your own website. You're on every single podcast that you go on as a guest's website. What's better than just having your own website and your name on there? You have your links, your name on multiple. So now Google search optimization goes through the roof for your name. Your credibility and authority go up because people see you interviewed over and over again. They ever Google search you. I just realized all these powers of repurposing of content, taking the content, and now you can take the content and put it in 30, 60-second reels, TikToks, YouTube shorts. You can become omnipresent to the people that matter in your business. I saw this on this first episode. I was like, I gotta lean into this. So what I did, Dr. Mitch, is I kept going, and I did 7 to 10 podcasts a week. My wife was so annoyed because I was doing them in the dining room. Okay, I had a setup. I had like a step and repeat setup. This is crazy to think about. I'm telling a story. Like, I can't even believe I did this. I set up in my dining room table a step and repeat permanently sitting in our dining room. Can't believe my wife even let me do that. And it said, "What are you made of?" And it was different. It wasn't a real brick wall like this is with a sign. And I did the podcast for, I don't know how many episodes there, and guested on a lot of shows there. And I started seeing the results. And I said, man, I'm just going to continue to do this. And I became known, and I would go places. People would recognize me. They would want to take selfies. They'd want my autograph. I was just blown away by it. I'm like, this is powerful, because I still felt like the same guy, but now people's perception of me changed. So then I did that for a long time. I've been on over 922 podcasts in the last 4 years. And I decided a year and a half ago to start a company called That One, to show other people how to do this in their business and for their personal brand by getting on top 5% shows and above, and then leveraging that attention.
For every C-Roc out there, right, there's a million of people that don't have that it factor. And just that factor that they can easily get on, have conversations. They know enough about the general world where they can pretty much communicate with anything, pivot, do whatever it is they have to do, right? And one of the things that you do is you're a performance coach too. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here a little bit, but you've seen some of these posts of these life coaches in their 30s and so on and so forth. And you're like, man, what the hell do you know yet? Right? Like, you haven't been through your divorce. You haven't lost a business. You haven't done all this stuff. But this performance coaching, tell me about that, because I think anybody can come up with something really good, but they got to have that skill factor. So tell me about your performance coaching.
Well, first of all, anybody can coach someone as long as there's a few steps ahead of them. Right. So
right.
That's important to understand. Cause I mean, I could very easily sit there and look at people and say, man, what do you know? You're 25 years old, but as long as they're ahead of the people that they're coaching and they've experienced some things, there's nobody better to coach somebody on a topic or an experience than somebody that's been through it. Right.
100%.
So everybody can be a coach. Everybody is a coach. Everybody is an influencer. Right. And then also the it factor, like everybody's got the it factor inside of them. They just have to, like, it's really not whether they have it or not. It's whether they found it or not, and then have developed it. Right. So to talk about, what did you want me to talk about? Performance?
Like performance coaching. Does a guy call you up and say, hey man, I need help figuring out how to do this?
Yeah. So I have a servant heart. I wake up obsessed every morning to help people. So I don't charge. I don't have a service where I charge for performance coaching. I have businesses and I run services through these businesses, and then I coach and consult through my businesses as added value. It's just part of what I do. I can't even help it. So that's what I do. I can very easily start a company too with that part of it as well. It hasn't been on my heart to do that right now. And but yeah, I spent 3 years, 3 hours a week, 3 years with one of the greatest performance coaches on the planet. His name's Richard Dolan. He's worked with LeBron James, Juwan Howard, Miami Heat, the Lakers, Mike Tyson, you name it. Drake. He's been with a lot of people that everybody's heard of before. I just immerse myself in his content and being in proximity to him, and learn some of the and by the way, I get the benefit of everything he did and the people that he was around. And then I just basically took it and made it my own around my experiences and my personality. And so I didn't copy. I don't copy. I got a lot of the lessons from Rich, but I made it my own, and I emulate him for sure. And that's where it's come from.
So that brings up another great topic. So on a couple things that may be more now, I don't know if my intel was exactly up to date, but you've got over 1 million followers. I don't know if you're reaching 2 million yet or whatever, but that's a lot of people. That is a lot of people. So here's a question I would ask you. A question I would want to know is, so who do you follow? Who do you Who do you read? Who do you watch?
Well, Grant Cardone was a guy 4 or 5 years ago that I caught on to, and I was just like intrigued by what he was talking about. I don't agree with everything he says all the time and the way he acts sometimes. He's a knucklehead sometimes, but no, I mean, I respect him and what he's accomplished. But there's tons of people, but right now, let's talk about right now. I'm reading a book called Arete, and it's 900 pages, and it's all little micro lessons that he's learned, and he studied all these different people, and I'm diving into this thing right now, and I'm reading it, and a lot of the things I've heard before, but there's other things that I just haven't looked at it from the perspective he's looked at it. And so, I mean, I would pay attention to that right now if I was, anybody that's out there looking for something new to get into. What else am I reading? Robert Greene wrote the 48 Laws of Power. He's also got the Daily Laws book, and every day has a different law to read, and I've been reading that. I read the Bible every day, and I'm also an L. Ron Hubbard fan. I'm a Christian, but I'm really into L. Ron Hubbard's writings. I don't, not everybody agrees with it, and there's been some bad stuff out there about Scientology and different things, but everything that I've read is just amazing. And I think it gets a bad rap because it helps people get off drugs, and there's some pharmacy fans and people from the pharmaceutical world and psychiatric world that aren't a fan of money being taken from them. So they don't like things that work. So that's just my experience. And those are the things I'm reading right now.
Yeah, that's a great perspective, man. I know it. I know for me, like, I love to be challenged all the time in my thinking. Right. And I think guys like us, a lot of times we challenge ourselves more than anybody does. Right. Like, man, is that something that I should have said in that moment or thought about in that moment? But it is super fascinating. So, yeah, I also want to talk to you a little bit about this because it's kind of something that I heard from you that actually hit home for me. But you were talking about celebritizing who you are, celebritizing yourself. Is that necessary for the greater growth?
So for business, are we talking about business?
Business, podcast? I mean, yeah.
Well, anything you're trying to expand, you need to be known, right? So it could be your personal brand. You yourself need to become celebritized in your industry or space, or your company needs to be celebritized. So, some people are like, well, I'm not really the type of person to be out there and face of the company, this and that. Well, it's okay. Well, make sure that there's somebody that is doing that, but then the company, and depending on the size of the company, but the company is celebritized. It's got to be known. Like the worst thing you can do is be good at what you do and be the best kept secret. So number one thing in business, is promotion. Like that's first step one. Promote. Tell people about what you're doing. Because if you're not doing that, nothing else matters. It doesn't matter if you have systems and processes. It doesn't matter if your follow-up game's good. It doesn't matter if your fulfillment's good. It doesn't matter if your culture and your company's good, core values. None of that matters unless you can promote and people know who you are. So for me, celebritization and becoming that one in your industry, which is also about differentiation, not becoming a commodity and commoditizing yourself or your service, your business, differentiation. That's what that one's all about.
So what's the next step for you?
Next step for me, I'm going, my son just finished his senior year football. They won a state championship undefeated. And I just wanted to commit to that and make sure I was around for that and help out any way I could. And now that he's done, I'm going to go back on the road speaking, live events, and I'm going to go out there and just meet a lot of people, be around a lot of people, and build this company and build that one into one of the premier celebritization companies out there.
Which is phenomenal because actually I'm going to be calling you once we get off of this show because we need to do that. It's one of the things that, my Achilles heel is I run a big business and time, right? And so it's like there's just certain things you can't do on your own. So you will be getting a call from me because we need to get into that zone. And after reading all the stuff about you and who you are, I'm in. I'm hook, line, and sinker on that. If I get the hat and the shirt, do I get a hat and a shirt?
Yeah, we have merch for you. Yeah,
Okay.
That1merch.com. That1merch.com. Go check it out.
That's right.
We have hoodies too. The hoodies are the best. But listen, here's the thing. There's a lot of people that do what we do, not to the level we do and how we do it, but they don't do it themselves or for themselves. Like what I did, and this is something for everybody to think about. If you're taking notes, write this down. If you find something in your business that works, or you're doing something for yourself that works, make a business out of it. Like, why would you figure something out that works and execute on it for yourself and then not create an opportunity for other people to take advantage of it and then monetize it? And that's all I'm doing. I'm coming from a place of doing it every day, having success with it, going through the trials and errors and all this other stuff. And then I just make a business out of it by offering it to other people. And by the way, this is like the mortgage business. When I made millions, I was not like excited about waking up and going to work every day. Now I mean, I love it. I feel like I'm on vacation every day, but I'm still being very successful and impactful.
Well, I mean, you're out of the kitchen and you got a good view now. So, I mean, obviously something went successful.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Although, you know
So,
what, I got to tell you this too. Like when I'm not shooting the show and on all those shows, I still go up to the dining room and I'll sit there and I got another laptop up there. My wife gets so mad because I have like, by the way, she's an angel and I don't want to paint her in a bad light because she's not, but she's just like, I just built this freaking awesome studio, man, where you got to still have your stuff up here. But I like to read in the dining room and do some of my calls up there, you know? So,
man, I tell you what, it's fun. And I want to share something. I want to share some things with you. I mean, hopefully, you know, we can stay in contact. I know how timing goes and stuff, but yeah, I was really drawn to you when I started learning about you because I'm like, wow, man, this guy kind of parallels me a lot. You know, in this show, I'm some people give me a little bit of shit about it, but you know, I'm big into the Navy SEAL mindset. I've actually done a pretty extensive study on true pathological brain patterning and so on and so forth, and the brain's pretty easy to understand if you kind of understand how the human nature and the human body works and how the chemistry works and so on and so forth. And that's what I'm going to be doing a lot of in my consulting thing, which I do now with people. But it is fascinating, and I'm sure you get the same. Like I had a guy who, you know, him and his wife are going through an issue, and he comes to my office. He's like, man, I know I need to talk to you, right? And then um, one of the funny stories that I had about that same billionaire, he texts me 2 or 3 times a week and crazy stuff. And I'm like, man, you got nothing better to do. And he told me this story. He said, one of my friends, which is another very, very wealthy friend of his, he said, and no disrespect to Tony, but Tony does some of their stuff, some of their mastermind stuff. And but he says, you know, I don't know, I'm kind of past Tony. He says, like, who do you call when like you got some shit that you really need to process through? He said, well, you might want to sit down for this. He said, it's a chiropractor out of North Glen, Colorado. and, and it was humbling, but yet I get it from the neurological standpoint, man. It doesn't matter how much money you have, you still have problems. And that's why I love those sayings that you had, right? Create bigger problems and or create something bigger to eliminate the small problems. So that's just phenomenal saying. I absolutely love that. I'm glad we had you on the show, man. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I really enjoy where you come from, your perspective on things, and I'm hoping we stay in touch because there's a lot of things I know that you can teach me, and I'm willing to learn.
yeah, absolutely. Same to you, man. I mean, I'm a lifetime learner. So I love to hear, you know, things that you're picking out. And, you know, it's not just a specific lesson. It's the perception of the person that got the lesson. And when they share their perception of it, it can change things as well. So it could be the same concept that we've heard millions of times. So I'm always interested in, I study human behavior all the time as well. So part of human behavior is the perceptions people have of things. So no, I'm open to it too. And for sure, man, I appreciate you having me on. Thank you so much.
Yeah, man, I'm a freak about that stuff. Just how it affects people neurochemically, and if you understand the why that your brain goes to the places that it goes to, life is just so much easier. We are so emotionally driven, and that's why people in success, guy like yourself, and the reason I asked that question before about being kind of an emotional robot is it's a straight line. The curves come from the emotions. And if you can eliminate a lot of the emotion, you can't eliminate it all, but if you eliminate a lot of it, man, the answer comes to you real fast.
Yeah, I always say if I stay up tone emotionally, everything always works out for me. You know,
Right.
and like you said, you can't always be up there, but you know, chronically you want to be high toned emotionally, but you know, you're gonna have your acute moments where you get angry, you get impatient or antagonistic, you know, but like as long as you can keep yourself in and at call, you could just change, you're gonna be well taken care of.
I agree with you. Couldn't agree with you more. let's stay in touch, buddy. If there's anything I can ever do for you, let me know. Thank you for coming on our show, though. I greatly appreciate it.
Appreciate you, man.